Well, Iran says a lot of things and doesn't necessarily do all of them. Iran has an interest at this point in raising the temperature in the Middle East, the pressures on Israel as well. The big question is, would Iran get Hezbollah in southern Lebanon to become involved in the fighting? Hezbollah is a very significant militant group, the most important for Iran in the region. It has, according to its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, about 100,000 trained fighters who recently have been training in how to take Israeli villages. It also has between 120,000 and 150,000 rockets, which it could fire. Now, the general thinking about Iran Hezbollah is that Iran wants to keep Hezbollah in reserve and its rockets in reserve in case there is an Israeli or a US attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, which have been, and that sort of attack has been threatened for many years now. The question would be, if Iran wants to get involved, it would get involved through Hezbollah, but is it prepared to let quite a large number of those defensive rockets that Hezbollah has actually be used up? But I should add, though, that if Hezbollah does get involved in a serious way and starts sending large volleys of rockets, it could become very serious for Israel because doubtless Hamas will be sending rockets at the same time. And the consequence will be that could be overwhelming for Israel's Iron Dome rocket defense system, which is very effective against a reasonably small number of incoming rockets and missiles, but could be overwhelmed by a large volume.
Yes,
so just what they would do remains to be seen.
And Ian, would that possibly allow Hezbollah to enter at a time when perhaps Israel has begun the ground offensive and is focused on activities in Gaza? Exactly.
That would be a far wiser thing for Hamas, or for Hezbollah to do. I'm a bit puzzled by the use of the word preemptive action by Iran. And I agree with what you've just said, that the logical thing to do would be to get involved when Israel has already committed forces to Gaza. And it does seem that they're determined to take over at least the top half of Gaza at this point.
Yeah. How dangerous is it for the President Biden to visit the region at this very volatile time?
Well, it's an unusual visit to make because normally movements by US presidents into danger areas are very closely held secrets. I mean, I can recall when President George Bush, visited Iraq. One never knew he was going there until after he'd been, essentially. And similarly, when he made visits to Afghanistan. But the problem at this stage will be, first of all, I don't think Biden will be there for very long. I suspect he'll be in Israel for only a matter of hours. And what it means, of course, I think, is that Israel's assault will probably be held back until after Biden actually leaves. The big problem for the Americans, and I assume they've taken contingency planning on this, will be how to protect his aircraft while it's on the ground, presumably at Ben Gurion Airport, halfway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem.
Yes.
And because certainly it would be a very inviting target, both for Hezbollah and for Hamas. If they could hit the US president's plane, that would really be quite a victory from their perspective.
But hugely provocative. You talk about how it looks as if Israel is holding off on this ground offensive, which they've been saying now is imminent for days. It may kick off as soon as Joe Biden leaves. What do you think it's going to look like? Will it be a massive onslaught, air, sea, land, or a staged response, do you think?
Well, the Israelis aren't telegraphing that punch at this point. They've certainly indicated that the northern half is going to be their first objective. Now, we're talking here about I mean, essentially a relatively small area, but it's a large area if you're an army that's going in there to try to hold it, and also an area where there are a lot of places for the enemy to hide. Peter Hartley, your previous guest, was talking about the very extensive tunnel network that Hamas has constructed, many kilometres right throughout the underground area of Gaza, and that means that Hamas fighters will be able to pop up at times behind the invading Israeli forces. My guess would be they would want to go in fairly large numbers because they won't really want to suffer a setback right at the start. They will want to make sure that they have gone in and very quickly achieve their objectives. Their big problem will be if there are still civilians in the northern part of Gaza, and doubtless if there could be some civilian casualties.
Yes, and it seems as if Hamas has got other surprises up its sleeve, that there are other, this was just not one attack, that they may have other plans. We know, of course, they've still got up to 200 hostages.
Yes, exactly. The taking of hostages was, of course, very deliberate because Hamas has done very well with Israeli hostages, with just one Israeli hostage that they took in 2006, Gilad Shalit. They managed to get 1,000 Hezbollah, or Hamas, sorry, 1,000 Palestinians who were in Israeli prisons released. So hostages are a very good deal as far as Hamas is concerned.
Yep.
The other point, though, is that when Hamas started this, I think they were hoping for a general Palestinian uprising. They hoped that the West Bank would rise up as well. I think they probably hoped that Iran would allow Hezbollah to get involved. Now, I think this is just sort of to expand on that point. I think Iran was probably a bit surprised by what happened, because if Iran had been communicating with Hamas in advance, the Israelis would have picked it up. Israel controls all communications throughout the Gaza Strip and going into the Gaza Strip, and their intelligence wouldn't have missed that.
Yeah.
So I think Iran may still be working out to what extent it wants to get involved. Yeah. But in the West Bank itself, there's been a lot of tensions lately. There's a group called the Lion's Den, which is a very young militant group, and they are very much in conflict with the Israeli settlement movement that is happening there, and they could get involved. So there's a potential, I should say, at this stage, for Israel to be involved on three fronts once the fighting starts.
Yes, fascinating insights. I do appreciate your analysis. Thanks, Ian.
You're welcome.